Whoever you are, listen carefully and do not dismiss this message lightly. If you are hearing these words, it means you are trapped in a spell. A spell so craftily disguised, you do not even realize it has you in its grip. It appears to you as the very world you perceive, and the short little life you believe to be all that you really are. What is this spell? Last week we discussed how Don Juan, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer, described human perception to his apprentice Carlos Castaneda as a form of habituation. As he describes it, human habituation is like a radical, fundamental, and sweeping system of hypnotic mind conditioning, which traps human beings into a particular and highly restricted view of reality, which is not fundamentally true. Once we've been indoctrinated into this system, however, the snare is cast, and it holds the vast majority of us in its sticky iron web for life. From birth to death, precious few of us will ever find our way free. Welcome to the Wild Garden of Enlightenment course on awakening, which really means a course on liberation from our entrapment in this web of deception. My name is Tobin Blake, your host, your guide, your fellow traveler along the pathless path of freedom. Today's Dharma is really an extension of last week's, in which we, hopefully, took a bit of the mystery out of just what this trap we've been caught in is all about, as well as what our real or natural state beyond it actually is. Here, I am calling the restricted viewpoint we see from within the spell the ego, which blinds us to that beautiful thing called awareness, the seat of consciousness and the mother of all mysteries. Originally, these two episodes were written as one piece, so if you listened to last week's talk, you may notice that some of the material may feel a little repetitive. But sit tight and you'll soon see how I expand on these points in ways I believe will lend you a fresh perspective. The repetitive sections are also useful in their own right, as for our special and rather tricky goal, we do need this kind of multidimensional reinforcement, because the ego state from which we set out is an especially muddy perspective. Besides our stuck point of view, of even greater concern perhaps is the ego's active defensive system, which intentionally inhibits our ability to see beyond it, or even to sense that there might be such a thing as beyond. The entire egoic structure itself is a block to true vision. It is like a blindfold we don't even realize we're wearing. It doesn't help much to try to see through this blindfold. We must actually be brave enough to simply take it off, as well as to understand how to go about doing that. You need today's lesson in order to prepare yourself. We're going to begin making direct approaches at this maneuver very soon, and the clearer your understanding of the direction, the easier the shift will be. With this in mind, I invite you to settle back, open up, and let the wise inner teacher within you help you understand today's sacred lesson. Let's get into it. In his book, The Transparency of Things, Contemplating the Nature of Experience, Rupert Spira draws readers' attention to the white paper upon which the words of the book itself were written. He points out that even though the white background of the paper had always been there, few readers ever notice it. It is as if the background of everything we read is so familiar to us, it has become almost invisible. Likewise, awareness itself is so all-encompassing and ever-present, until we start paying attention to it, it's practically imperceptible. This is reminiscent of Eckhart Tolle's analogy of how fish must know nothing about water. In fact, likely don't even notice it, for water constitutes their entire universe. Human beings are similarly blind to our own planet's atmosphere. We move through our days, taking the world's atmosphere for granted, yet it constitutes a sea of vital, life-sustaining gas, without which we would quickly perish, just like a fish suddenly plucked from the sea. It is not nothing, therefore, but a substantial environment which we remain mostly oblivious of. In a way, awareness is like this too, except that our connection to it is even more fundamental. A fish could be removed from water, but we can never be separated from the ocean of consciousness. We are not moving through awareness, like a fish moving through water. Rather, we are awareness. It is therefore indivisible from our experience. Yet instead of experiencing our lives centered on our reality as awareness, our minds have become absorbed in our human story and physical experience, just as a reader becomes completely focused on the words of a book to such an extent they rarely, if ever, even stop to pay attention to the white backdrop of the page itself. Spira goes on to bridge this analogy to the reality of awareness. He writes, "What about the awareness itself, which is aware of the paper? Is it not always present behind and within every experience? Just as the paper is present behind and within the words on the page? We may also note that while the content of books is all very different, the background remains the only constant. This is very much like the changing scenery, conditions, emotions, and thoughts that populate our individual lives. Whether we are thinking about something, feeling an emotion, reading a book, watching TV, having a conversation, or boarding a plane, everything we think, feel, see, hear, taste, touch, or do appears to us on the white page of our consciousness. That is the background, the only constant, and yet most of us have become completely disconnected from it, lost in a swirling sea of thoughts, perceptions, and swinging emotional fluctuations. Awareness becoming aware of itself is simply called waking up. As Spira likens awareness to a white page, I have often likened awareness to the sky and the impressions that appear during our lifetimes as being similar to clouds that come and go and constantly change within that sky. Basically, the content of human life consists of transitory feelings, thoughts of many types, fleeting perceptions and experiences. Yet there is a steady observer there, or experiencer, we might say, witnessing it all. Very simply, this witness is the stable component we are attempting to reconnect with. It is also important to understand that the mind of the ego isn't really separate from awareness at all, because awareness cannot be separated from anything. Without the page, text of any kind becomes inconceivable. Even if we advance to a point where pages and words are no longer necessary for communication at all, there would still need to be a perceiving consciousness available to receive it. The egoic mind, too, appears within awareness. It's merely a story, crafted with ink on the page of awareness. It isn't the paper itself, but we can't say that it's separate from the paper either. Mind is mind, in the same way that water is always just water, whether it is in the ocean or river, a glass of drinking water, or in the form of rain and ice. The ego might be likened to a whirlpool within a river. Of course, a whirlpool is not really separate from the river, you see. It is merely a formation that often occurs within the greater flow of the water, where there is some obstruction or disturbance, such as a rock, a fallen branch, some other aberration in the river's contour, or perhaps a waterfall, which causes the flow of the water to curve back on itself and get caught in a twisting vortex. The ego is just like this. It is a formation within the greater awareness caused by some obstruction or generalized disturbance. The force of thinking and desire, perhaps, which causes a part of awareness to become temporarily trapped and fixated. It isn't really waylaid, of course, but a tiny element of it can believe in the idea of entrapment. Awareness itself is actually completely open and compliant, just like water is, and we can do anything we like with it. We'll explore this soon, but for now, consider this. We are creators by nature, and so what we have done as human beings is not so unusual, nor is it necessarily wrong. It is only to the extent that we forget our true identity as awareness and become lost in the dream of the whirlpool, causing ourselves and others, in many cases, terrible suffering and fear, that problems arise. It is within the motion of the whirlpool that an imaginary gap appears inside the vacant hollow at its center, in what would otherwise be unobstructed awareness or flowing river. Here the mind fixates and gives birth to an entire, albeit temporary, entity within time and space. A fragment of swirling water that seems, for a moment, cut off from the flow of the river itself. This fixation of the mind upon a specific position in space-time is what causes our profound disorientation to reality. I should mention here, it is not just your individual mind that causes this illusory vision. It is the collective mind of our species. Your own mind is but a segment of a vaster constellation of consciousness, the greater whirlpool. As our indoctrination to the human viewpoint matures, we become steadily hypnotized by the overwhelming sights and sounds of the apparition before us, which seems to be external, but whose origin must be traced back to the mind itself. This is the only way. Once the ego becomes fixated, the illusion of the world's reality becomes extremely convincing, and its dissolution then becomes a source of fear, appearing to us as our own destruction. Now, if you really understand what all this implies, you may also catch an insight that is of particular importance. The ego actually consists of several components, not just our mental structure. The ego is a system that includes the body, the physical universe, and time. Together, this complex makes up our primary identity, a concept of an individual self that appears to exist in absolute independence from all other people, life forms, and the physical universe, as well as God. Essentially, an island of mind bound up within a temporary prison of flesh, time, and space. In effect, this entire experience is the ego. This means that in reality, the mind, the body, the temporal progression, and physical space are not discrete elements at all, nor are they merely connected. They are one and the same entity. Without the mind, the body would be a lifeless lump of flesh. Without the body, the world could not be perceived at all. Without the world, the idea of a separated mind within a body is wholly inconceivable. And without time, only eternity would remain, and the entire illusion would instantaneously collapse in on itself, or the whirlpool would be released. Yet, to add another layer to this, the body, time, and the world are still ultimately only elements of the mind itself, just as the mental aspect of the ego is. And all are equally ethereal. The only distinction between them is that the body and the world have been given the illusion of physical form, while the temporal stream seems to exist in some state of limbo in between. Not quite physical, yet we do perceive the apparent transfiguration of the material world and the body as time, quote unquote, goes by. And just where does time go? Nobody seems to know, for it merely slips away, as if it never even existed. Notably, this is not unlike any of the other elements of the ego. Think of the body. It too will one day simply cease to be, as if it had never existed. Even the memories of the deceased's loved ones will be covered over by the past's misty haze, until they too one day vanish from the vault of time. So too for the world, the sun and the stars, as well as the very cosmos that cradled them in its own vaster body, or at least seem to. Blink, and they are gone, all gone, just like a dream. Nothing is really stable in time and space, you see. No matter how solid and dependable we struggle to make it all seem, it is a passing figment in some great sky which the human mind can never comprehend. Now, before you panic, there's more to the story than our first glance has revealed. Remember, the experience of our lives as egos is fiction, mere words on a page. You are not that story, nor a fiction, but something far more significant. And while it is true, your human mind will never understand your reality, you can nevertheless know it. There is an experience that transcends the ego, which goes by many names. What we call it doesn't matter, but how we may approach it is a very important lesson indeed. It is through the grace of presence that the cracks in the ego story can be experienced, and this experience needs no interpretation. It eliminates all doubt and confusion. It heals. It heals our minds. It heals It heals our hearts. And yes, it can even heal our bodies. For within this sacred encounter, all stories dissolve. There is no strife, no struggle, no pain, no judgment. Peace now comes and covers everything, and only awareness remains. As we prepare to begin approaching the holy instant directly, also known as Kinsho in Buddhism, let us start simply by reflecting on the difference between our life story and the background of awareness which experiences that story. These are not the same. So, however makes sense to you, see if you can disentangle yourself from the story of your life enough to just begin getting a feel for the background state of presence and pure awareness, which lies at your root, quietly and in perfect stillness, beneath all the clamor, the seeking, the constant thoughts and frantic activities of the body and judgments of the ego. Perhaps it'll help you to imagine this most fundamental part of yourself as the white paper the words of your life are written on, that open sky in which the clouds appear, or the river that holds 1,000,000 whirlpools. This can indeed be challenging, but if you practice in earnest, you might be surprised how easily you can connect with that something else. I'd also like to suggest that you set aside just a little time specifically for making this kind of effort, so that it doesn't get overlooked. Plan to spend just a few minutes every day this week, a few times a day if you're willing, turning your attention gently but with intention toward the background state described in today's Dharma, and hold it in awareness as best you're able. We'll go into more specific instructions on this type of practice soon, but consider this week a way of testing the waters, so to speak, if only to get your toes wet. And by the way, please be sure to share your experiences, questions, and insights in the comment sections of these dharmas, which can help others, obviously, but you may also find that in doing so, you might even be able to clarify things in your own perspective, which you might not have otherwise caught. Before we wrap up, if today's reflection resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the course with others. It's a simple way to keep this work free and accessible, while helping these teachings find those who need them most. Thank you for being a part of this growth. Now, let's close out. Next time on the Wild Garden of Enlightenment, we're going to take a break from all the heavy theory and jump into an utterly transformative practice that finds its roots in ancient Taoism. I've adapted the teaching for the purposes of our course and present it in such a way that it's simple to pick up and understand. I wanted to introduce it now because using it will naturally teach you both the direction we need to take to slip through the ego's snare, as well as the powerful sense of liberation that comes when we do so. This is a Dharma I've been excited to put out since day one, and it's one you don't want to miss, trust me. Until then, vaya con Dios, with presence and with love. Thank you for joining me.